So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our highly anticipated AI webinar. Today, we're intending to bring you on a journey as we delve into the world of AI and its ever-expanding impact on our lives. If we've been hosting this only this time last year, I expect quite a few of you would have been like me, completely in the dark as to what ChatGPT means. And yet here we are. And since the start of this year, AI has propelled its way into our lives and has emerged as a powerful catalyst, revolutionizing industries, shaping economies, and reshaping the way that we perceive the world. Now, depending on who you speak to, there are differing views. Some see it as leading to the destruction of humanity. Others see it as possibly leading to miracle cures for cancer. We've got some people who are concerned that it may displace jobs, others that it will enhance efficiency and future productivity. So in reality, it's likely to cover all of those scenarios. So during this webinar, we will unravel some of the mysteries behind AI's capabilities and explore its application across diverse sectors. We're hoping to explore the legal and ethical considerations surrounding AI and its role in shaping a sustainable, equitable, and inclusive future. You'll be able to listen to expert insight and hopefully gain a deeper understanding of what it means to you and your business. There's quite a number of you on the call today, but we would like this to be as interactive as it can be. We've got some time allowed at the end of the presentation for you to put any comments that you would like to in the chat, raise any questions, and I'll do my best to keep an eye on it with my fellow ambassadors on the call, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to have a discussion at the end. So just moving on to some very brief introductions. My name is Carrie Stevenson. I'm the South West Ambassador for Policy and Governance. I'm also a lawyer. I'm former General Counsel and Company Secretary of Mitsubishi Motors Group, and I'm founder of Brave, which is a consultancy specializing in legal risk governance and compliance and offering services to directors and their businesses. Joining me today are my fellow ambassadors who are experts in their fields. We have James Savage, who's the Southwest Ambassador for High-Tech Industry and Tech Ventures. We also have Amanda Capon. She's the Southwest Ambassador for People and Culture. But most importantly, we are also joined today by Michael Borrelli. Michael is an AI leading expert and visionary from the AI community who will be presenting today and who will share his knowledge and experience. So I'll let Michael introduce himself and I will hand over to Michael.
Thank you, Carrie. And first and foremost, thank you, all of you, for joining us today. It's an absolute honor to be able to be here and to go on this journey together. I think a lot of us are struggling with a few technological trends that are gripping society today. So helping us tackle this and moving, exploring the minor details, should we say, ultimately has benefits for businesses and society at large. But we can cover more of that later. Myself, I've worked in regulatory compliance for my entire career, spent over a decade in financial services, advising firms on regulatory change. And AI has always been an interest of mine, technology, law, and finance being the three sort of pillars of what I look at. And being in the AI space the past 4 years has been immensely eye-opening, but also very, very interesting. So I think we're very happy to go on this journey with you guys today and answer any questions and look at some of the aspects. It's very complex, as you probably know, so may not be able to cover everything, but hopefully give you enough to give to certainly whet the appetite. Right, so I think it's also important to look at what the gender topics we're looking at today, and they're quite a broad topics. And as Carrie has touched on, each one is probably worth their own presentation in its own regard, but we'll do our best to cover it in sufficient detail for yourselves. But I think setting the scene is probably the most important thing. So I think warning shots are being fired from global tech leaders, and these are not sort of people that you haven't probably heard of. These are people that are causing a lot of headlines to be triggered across multiple media outlets. You've got people like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, reiterating its capabilities and driving sort of innovation and economies around the world. I think we can draw parallels to how the Industrial Revolution revolutionized the way economic interactions occurred at the back end of the 19th century and early 20th century. So I think this is something which we need to consider, and policy leaders are, considering with the same level of importance. It's probably always good to start off these things with having a bit of audience interaction. We believe in being sort of interactive engagements. We've actually prepared a little poll for you guys, but it does require you to log into LinkedIn. So I'm just going to switch to going to put the link in the chat, and this is a good opportunity for all of you to let us know how do you use AI, or do you use AI in your business. So I'm just going to pop this link in the chat. And if you guys could kindly just log in and give your thoughts, and then we can share the results live.
If nothing else, this is going to test everybody's IT skills.
It's not a test of LinkedIn, of course. It's just a fun little bit of engagement. I mean, by way of example, I could say I use AI in the business, so I think there's one vote for us already. Right, so that's 18 of us. Okay, so probably give another 30 seconds or so. But overwhelmingly, it seems as though 82% of us are using AI in the business. Not sure. Maybe we could have a little Q&A at the end to see why that was the case. I think under the EU AI Act, there's still uncertainty of the definition of AI system, so I could possibly surmise as to why that would be the reason. But an interesting way to start the presentation. But whilst we obviously all of us are fairly well read on AI and technological trends, the majority of society may not be as sort of cognizant of this as the rest of you. But we have a duty to sort of bring the education piece to the wider sector. Now, understanding AI is important, and for novices like myself, you have to go through that education phase on an ongoing basis. The people you work with, or innovation is ongoing. It's a daily process, and catching up with it takes a lot of work, trust me. And as you can see from the 1950s onwards, there's a lot of it's gone down various progressions and various different iterations or forms. As James will probably give you more information here, the large language model phenomenon has taken on a lot of significance in the past few months, and you've got headline companies at the bottom who've driven innovation across the large sort of portions of the 20th century. But I'll hand you over to James here for more of a deep dive into this. James, are you there?
Sorry, done the classic, muted. Let me try again. Yeah, I think I would say is I think a lot of us are very excited and interested in AI at the moment. But if you actually look at it, it's been around for a very long time. Shortly after the Second World War, Alan Turing sort of postulated that AI could do amazing things with computers. And we then moved on, as we can see in the presentation slide, to sort of neural networks and things in the sort of 80s. I remember I was a technical guy at university. I remember playing with beginnings of neural networks in the 80s at university. But right now we're sort of into an absolutely massive stage of progress. Things are happening very, very quickly. the way I like to sort of think of it is sort of LLMs, larger language models, which are things that have been causing all the excitement in the last few months. Is I could look at them as sort of predictive text on steroids. They're not HAL 9000 from the film 2001. They're not the Terminator. It's just the best description I've heard is it's advanced statistics. It's not a consciousness, is a way to think about it. There is a theory in AI around that, which is called general AI, but a bit like fusion power, that always seems to be 10 years in the future, and that's not really sort of where we see things going immediatly. But I do feel is these tools are improving incredibly quickly. ChatGPT was actually the fastest adopted technology when it was introduced earlier this year, which is quite remarkable. Whatever happens, we are going to see a change to the status quo. And as with every other rapidly changing technology, we could talk about steam power, the telegraph, electricity, nuclear power, the internet. There will be good and bad outcomes from it, and we don't really have the option of uninventing it. As we've sort of said, there's been a discussion about whether this is good or bad. 3 academics who really came up with the basis of large language models disagree. One of them thinks it's great and we should carry on without any checks. One of them thinks probably we should do some checks. And the third one thinks we should stop now everything. So even the experts who came up with it don't have a clear idea of where we should go. I think at the end of the day, as directors, it falls to us to decide which way we go with every decision we make. And the idea here is now to sort of put some decision behind that thought, and I'll hand that back to Michael.
Thank you, James. Very compelling insight. I think if Pandora is indeed out of her box, then we definitely need to go some way to controlling her and making sure the damage is mitigated. But that's obviously probably could be a more positive spin on that. But when we think of AI, it does come in various different forms, and it is complex. And as James alluded to there, there's on the spectrum you have narrow AI and you have more general AI. Some of the companies that we're talking to and dealing with, they do a more general AI, which is a more advanced level of human, so we say autonomy and sentience, versus more basic generative AI, albeit based on very complex models and data algorithms and things like this. So it is there's more than meets the eye, and it's very multifaceted. But I think to break it down into very easily digestible aspects, again for novices like myself, would be you have machine learning, so it's essentially a form of AI based on algorithms. Deep learning, which is more of an optimized form of that, and you can process a wider range of data resources. But then the most prominent form at the moment is large language models. So you have type of AI system trained on text data. I'm guessing a lot of you use ChatGPT. I'm guessing it'd be good to know which ones you use, or Bard, or whichever ones. And we liken it to it's very easy and accessible, but my personal experience in using ChatGPT, sometimes it's like dealing with a child. They need to be trained a bit. They make mistakes and they test your boundaries a bit, and it's about working with them. They don't get everything right always. I think it's important. It's even if it's a level of consciousness or it's a glorified data science, you still need to work with it. So it's an interesting, at least societal experiment, but from a business perspective, it has a lot of optimization benefits. And a good example of this is using SEO AI to do writing and helping assist with that. And we'll come on to the economic aspects on one of the later slides. Now, when all things technology, you've got the legal and ethical considerations are extremely important. We're lucky to be joined by esteemed professionals from the legal profession. And I'm going to hand you over to Carrie now, who can give you more of a flavor of what the main aspects that directors and senior business leaders should be considering with respect to AI, and what the practical ways of dealing with them are. So over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. I'll take that, esteemed legal professional. I'll just pause there just for a moment. No, joking aside, I mean, you've alluded to the fact that AI doesn't always get things right, and that's absolutely true. We know that AI holds immense potential, but it also presents significant legal risks and ethical questions that demand careful consideration. And there are many challenges that exist, and the most significant is going to be making sure that we've got the right guardrails in place to mitigate risk, but also ensure that we're promoting the opportunities that AI presents. Some of the risks include privacy and data protection. AI systems rely on a vast amount of data to train and operate effectively, but this reliance does raise concerns with regards to privacy and data protection. Organizations are going to have to ensure that they are compliant with relevant data protection laws going forward, such as GDPR. And additionally, transparency in the data collection and use is vital to maintaining consumer trust and avoiding any of those potential legal repercussions. One of the other issues that we know it exists with regards to AI is bias and discrimination. AI systems are only as unbiased as the data that they are trained on, and if the training data is biased, the AI system is going to perpetuate that bias, and it will amplify those biases, which inevitably may well lead to discriminatory outcomes. So it's likely that there will be legal challenges arising when AI algorithms produce discriminatory results, particularly in sensitive areas such as recruitment, lending, and criminal justice. We also know that AI raises complex intellectual property issues. It's going to be incredibly difficult to determine ownership and protection of AI-generated works. The question of whether the AI itself is the owner or whether it's considered an inventor or an author remains unanswered in many jurisdictions across the world. It's going to be absolutely necessary to have in place legal frameworks surrounding AI-generated creations, because otherwise we're going to lose sight as to who owns content and get into to some complex legal territory.
Harry, we have a question.
Oh yes, thank you, Amanda.
Along those lines, which is whether there are any thoughts about potential litigation for ChatGPT creators.
Okay, sorry, you'll have to excuse, there's a phone going off in the background and I can't do anything about it at the moment. Any thoughts about potential litigation for ChatGPT? I mean, potentially the liability and accountability issue is going to arise as AI systems become more autonomous. That those questions surrounding accountability, liability are going to increase, especially when an AI system causes harm or makes an erroneous decision. So it's going to be vital to determine who is responsible, whether it's the developer, the operator, or the AI system itself. Again, it will go back to making sure that we've got those clear frameworks in place and making sure that there are robust controls and checks to ensure accountability and protect the rights of individuals to mitigate against the risk of litigation. So I've spoken about some of the legal challenges that present, but we can't move forward without talking about some of the ethical considerations. And whilst they're not strictly legal in nature, they are closely intertwined with legal risks associated with ethical principles, such as transparency, explainability, and fairness. All of those ethical considerations are going to have to be integrated into legal frameworks to address some of the potential harm that AI systems could cause. So as AI continues to shape our future, it's going to require a collaboration between policymakers, industry experts, legal professionals. It's going to be crucial that everybody comes together. We know that regulation is coming. Across the globe, countries are at various stages of evolving their approach to regulating AI and taking differing views as to how to handle it. Michael's alluded to the EU and the AI Act. The EU is ramping up its progress on the AI Act. The UK, interestingly, has taken a different approach. The government has decided not to legislate, but to create a single function to govern the regulation of AI. And it's elected to support existing regulators develop a sector-focused, principle-based approach. And the government's white paper on AI sets out the framework, but it's going to be up to UK regulators to publish non-statutory guidance over the next year to include practical tools, whether that's including risk assessments or standards. And we've seen the FCA recently have published its approach to big tech and AI, and they're welcoming the government's call for the UK to become the global hub of AI regulation, which is fantastic. But there are concerns surrounding the government's approach. There's a risk that regulators are going to produce contradictory guidance, which is going to make enforcement challenging without specific AI laws in place. But nonetheless, the government is aware of this, and it's progressing down the avenue that it wants to monitor the effectiveness of its policy, and then may introduce legislation in the future if necessary. So there is an ongoing debate about which approach is more successful, whether the top-down approach of the EU's AI Act or the UK's lighter touch approach. But ultimately, a global consensus on AI regulation is going to be the ideal. That does require people to collaborate, but given the current geopolitical climate we find ourselves in, I imagine that's going to be quite a challenge. So it's a case of watch this space at the moment as things develop. I'm just going to quickly go into the chat because there's a couple of comments there that I don't want to ignore. Okay, no questions at the moment. So just handing back to Michael then for the next slide.
Thank you for that. And I think it's nice to look at how the global consolidation on this, or consensus, as you say, is being reached. I think the government's pro-innovation framework it shows how progressively they're thinking about these things, and it's good that there's some alignment here. But in terms of the overall, the landscape of this is quite interesting, and perhaps we're looking at this more from the lens of the commercial aspect. Now, I think as business leaders and business owners, there's going to be very salient impacts, and you're going to be thinking, okay, why is this relevant to me? What's the business case? What do I need to worry about? What do I need to do? I think, there's plenty of regulations out there, and there's plenty of technological phenomenons. What makes this different, and what are the impacts? Well, we're even scratching the surface on this. There are a lot, and there's probably a lot that we don't even know about. Yeah, as you say, the unknown unknowns. So, for example, impacts. One of the major industries benefiting from this is healthcare. It's transforming the healthcare sector, enhancing diagnoses. For example, I spoke with a senior medical professional 2-3 weeks ago, and he says it's just revolutionizing the way he can see patients and roll out his products better, and it's ultimately the micro aspects of this are being felt. But obviously opportunities, as members of the IoD or attendees or advocates, you're always looking for opportunities, and you're always looking for, hey, how can this benefit possibly my end users? How can I deliver better value? What is it that makes this special? Well, especially the enhanced customer experience. We don't, long gone are the days where it take ages to make a message or a phone call, or you get stuck in you get given a lot of data, and you go, what do I do with this? How do I deal with it? Well, it's AI powered chatbots are enabling you to have that 24/7 engagement, and to do that sort of troubleshooting process, and do that holistic problem solving before you go to someone. So before, it's just taking away the pain from both the supplier and the customer, and it's opening up so many opportunities. I think even Rishi Sunak has acknowledged that this is such a fundamental aspect from the political agenda to focus on, that we really, really need to consider this seriously, if not already, of course. And lastly, barriers. Now, a lot of companies have been going on their enterprise AI adoption journeys over the past few years. Some are more advanced, some aren't. And as our sort of co-panelists here have alluded to, they've been helping firms, and obviously firms part of the IoD are going to want to say, hey, okay, AI, I'm interested in AI, but what are the barriers? Like, how do I get over these? Well, the education piece is massive. I think individuals may, in the same way that when GDPR came along, there was an initial education gap, and I think we'll come on to that in a minute, but that is a barrier, but also cost, and not just financial. You've got the time cost, you've got the labor cost, you've got the psychological cost, you've got so many different aspects of this that we're just scratching the surface. But with all aspects of fundamental human change, from the social, philosophical, economic, you name it, there requires an initial teething process. But as you get, every step you take, it gets you closer to your goal. Now, when we're talking about the social aspects, the mental health, the mental health amongst others, and the impact on the job is absolutely crucial, because we don't want people to. And you look at the Luddites with the Industrial Revolution. Some people rebelled because they didn't want to embrace it, and the people who did embrace it were the changes in productivity and all these different aspects. They required fundamental aspects, in that the rewiring of the brain itself, and the the neural networks of the actual human brain, which again is topics that people are probably going to be doing research on this for years to come. I think we're lucky to have Amanda on this to give more of a steer on how she's seeing this being felt boots on the ground, and from her sort of empirical based approach. So I'm going to hand you over to Amanda for more of a steer on this.
Oh, Amanda, you're on mute.
Wow. Okay, thank you. I was going to bask in the introduction from Michael, but having made the schoolboy girl error, I'll just skip over that. Thank you, Michael. So this slide really covers some very sort of high level areas, because as we've all talked about, we could go in depth in each and every one of these slides. So just a quick whiz around how AI may influence the world of work. As James and Michael have both mentioned, we've sort of had the Industrial Revolution. There's a permanent kind of change to the way that we're working. We realise that we can adapt as human beings. So this possibly isn't as bad as we think it's going to be. And certainly the people on this call, those of us that are speaking, we'll see this as a really positive thing. If we just very quickly look at the impact on recruitment, as James has mentioned, AI has been around for a long time, so it's been used in the shortlisting of candidates for well over 10 years. AI-powered recruitment tools can really help us search through a vast variety of databases, enabling us to attract a wider pool of candidates, and not just a global pool of candidates, but it's really helped us attract candidates who come from a diverse background and maybe have a disability, because the technology is advanced so that we're becoming more accessible and the recruitment processes are more accessible. And the fact that we can get live data on candidates means that recruitment can only get better and slicker. The one thing that I would mention here, as Carrie's kind of already alluded to, is the unintended consequences of what we're doing. So the database can only ever be as good as the data that's put into it and the instructions that we give to it. And I suspect there are many colleagues on this call who can remember the furore a few years ago when Amazon were penalised for their algorithms. Basically, they weren't reviewing CVs in a gender neutral way. So the majority of CVs that have been input into the system were male, because the majority of their technological job applications were male. So the system came to the conclusion that men were more favourable than women. And obviously that caused a lot of problems for Amazon. But that's something that we need to remember as we input data into these systems. AI will influence ultimately every role that we have. So it's not just the unskilled or lower skilled roles and those which can become automated. It will affect everything. It should enhance our efficiency and productivity, though, and lead to higher output and economic growth, as on the slide here. Job markets will change due to the flexibility in how and where work is done. And we started to see the move there sort of post-pandemic, and that flexibility needs to continue. In terms of the impact on mental health, I noticed that we've got an expert on the call in Harvey Castro, mentioned in the chat there. But I'm sure he could tell us much more than I can. But just to touch on a couple of points, I think there's a real positive in that AI can offer support, help, diagnosis 24/7, allowing mental health services to become available universally. It can also help support early diagnosis. It can help produce individual treatment plans, but it can't replace the human traits of empathy, care, emotional support. As Carrie's already mentioned, this is an area which has a lot of ethical considerations, which we haven't yet sort of got to the bottom of. And the other caveat that I guess is really important to us as directors is that we're already immersed in a 24/7 digital world, and we're going to become permanently available and engaged, sort of maybe more so than we are now. So in terms of our own mental health, when will we switch off? I think there are lots and lots of positives to AI, but I think James has already touched on this. I think we need to remember that we're talking about task achieving intelligence. So it's not something that can truly mimic what it's like to be human and our unique human traits. So when we're designing jobs, we need to future-proof them to make sure that we celebrate those traits so that they're creative, they're problem solving, they're all the things that we can do that maybe, we haven't taught the AI to do yet. As Carrie's mentioned, we need to watch how the employment law changes. So the EU's AI Act, the TUC are lobbying for something similar, as Carrie's already mentioned. And whatever you use or whatever you introduce, you need to ensure that we've covered the safeguarding, accountability and auditing aspects of it. But I think, as with all things people, and as ever, in the evolving world of AI, if you approach it with an open mind, a healthy level of skepticism, and the usual level of curiosity we all employ, I think we'll all be fine. So, Michael, anything to add to that?
I would just say that no, I think you've touched on a lot of the points. I think the Ada Lovelace Institute do a lot of good research in this area, and I think they recently did a survey in the UK. Generally speaking, a lot of people are more positive about AI now than they were a couple of months ago because of the education piece and because of the great work that lobbyists are doing. As with all seismic shifts in social constructs, as it were, there's gonna be a lot of change. There's gonna be a lot of fear initially, and in the same way that adopting all new form of technology or adopting a new habit, you've got to do research into it and got to embrace it. But the only other thing I'd add is AI literacy. So we're going to have to upskill ourselves on what AI literacy means. And that's separate from data literacy. So they are distinct in that sense. But there's a lot more upskilling we need to do, and there's a lot of work still to be done.
Yeah, apologies, and I failed to mention that, but governments are starting to get interested and are starting to get involved in terms of the upskilling, which is useful, if nothing else. But I think, as you've mentioned, the ability to understand, interpret data, and to think critically, they're going to be really important, and that's going to require a change in our education system in some respects.
Yes, I think the change almost becoming on autopilot. I think it's I think Yuval Noah Harari summarized it quite nicely in his book Homo Sapiens, where we've gone through 3 stages of revolution. We went through the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the cognitive revolution, and maybe this could be termed the ultra or hypercognitive revolution, and where AI could be more of an enabler or a co-pilot. And that, as you say, that could the changes at the schooling level will be, it could really enable and equip people, but obviously the infrastructural costs are absolutely, could be astronomical. So we need to be very considerate of how to look at this from theoretical and practical standpoints. But we, like you said, we could probably go on this for hours.
And to move on.
Certainly. So we have also touched on the future of work. Work being obviously a very important part of our lives, gives people a sense of purpose, obviously helps contribute to the economy and gives us, gives people to, leverage the skill sets and to have fair value exchange in the economy. There's been a lot of recent studies, as you could see here, some prominent data from the World Economic Forum shows how, for example, 74.9% of organizations will likely adopt AI over the next 5 years. Financial services and capital markets in particular are using it. As a financial services practitioner myself, I can see a lot of use cases, but I'm guessing you guys have already seen, if not experienced, a load of use cases there. I think James has some interesting insights on what it's doing to the labor market shift. So I'm going to hand you back over to James for his sort of insight on those points.
Thank you, Michael. I'll just a few quick words on this one. I think we're talking more generally here. I think we're still all digesting the effects of large language models. Do we have the outcome for that yet? No, we don't. But AI, sort of as the last generation, sort of in 2017 and 18, I think we're getting a fairly clear idea what it was. And there's been a good few books written about it. And one of the things that I always sort of come back to is that what we're facing here, and maybe that's more alarming for us, what should we say, middle class, white collared people, is that the mechanical manufacturing robot revolution that we saw come through in the previous century didn't really affect us because we could use our brains and our pens and our typewriters and everything was fine. I think what's coming through here is that this revolution in technology is going to affect our world of work very much more significantly than the previous sort of mechanical tool-driven, and probably to the same extent that was happening. I think that was a general view. One of the interesting things is sort of listening to my colleagues talk, and I think there's something that people miss out on quite a lot, is that, and this goes back to the comments about regulation and HR and everything else, is that one of the issues with these models, all of them, going back to the 50s, is that they come up with solutions that, because of the nature by which they do the calculations, you can't backprove them. So you ask an AI, what's the answer to this? Here's the data. It says, this is the answer. And you say, why? And it says, I don't know. I can't work out where it came from. And it's not the way that they go about solving the problem. So certainly in financial services, for instance, which is one of the ones we're mentioning here, I mean, they've been using it for trading on the stock markets forever. And the regulators turn around and say, well, why did your machine go off the rails and crash the stock market? And the hedge funds are turning around and said, well, my AI did it. And they said, well, that's fine, but why did it do it? And their answer is, I don't know. I just fed it the data and it did it. And we then have, various regulatory issues about, well, then we need to turn off the AIs because we don't know why they're making these decisions, right? So whereas a human process, we could go back and look at our workings, an AI, we can't necessarily do that. So there are some issues around that. So from my point of view, just looking at this sort of bottom piece here, sort of the top 5 industries, obviously information technology and digital communications, we all use social media and a number of things. That's all driven by AI. Google, Amazon, all that stuff, all the decisions about what you see on your screen is AI driven right now. Media, entertainment and sports, that's definitely coming along and things are moving there fairly quickly. I think automotives, we've all been talking for a while about sort of having self-driving cars. I'd say we're stepping back off the throttle on that one at the moment. I think the guys who are doing it are beginning to realize it's a lot harder than it thought. And we might well have very fancy cruise controls, but it's unlikely we're going to, for insurance reasons, if not anything else, we're going to let the AIs drive and let us sit in the back and watch them. Financial services briefly mentioned. Education and training. I think there's sort of two aims to that. One, I think we can leverage this to train people a good deal quickly and up more quickly. And I think second thing is we're all going to have to learn a new way of doing our jobs, particularly us with sort of white collar professional jobs. We're going to have to learn a lot of new skills. At that point, I'll hand back to Michael.
We're all lifelong learners, though, James, I assume, so it shouldn't be a problem. And an open mindset, I think that's key. I'd really like your point, James, actually, about the financial services aspect. I know we have a few people who work with, I think one of our participants works closely with the London Stock Exchange, and the concept of a circuit breaker could be quite useful. For those of you who may not know what a circuit breaker is, it's a mechanism to stop or halt trading if there's an event of such magnitude that warrants the action. For example, if prices would destabilize, for example, if the share price of Apple went up and down, like extreme volatility, or there was mayhem in the market or a cyber attack, a circuit breaker would stop all activity. So having the same mechanism for AI could give people that level of assurance. But that's for people to probably operationalize and see where the business case lies. Now, all things contextual, it's good to know, well, how can it be used? Where's the value? What's the real world application? Luckily, we have, again, our leading lawyer to give us an insight from a lawyer's world and to give us a use case. So I'm gonna hand you back over to Carrie for how AI is revolutionizing how the lawyers can and will be able to do their work in the future. So back over to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I mean, lawyers don't have the best reputation of being the most technological advanced group of individuals. I'm sure if there's any other lawyers on the calls, they would be cursing me for saying that right now. But we, out of a lot, we're probably the group that's most likely to put up some barriers to the adoption of AI, given our adversity to risk. But I have personally been working with it now for a good few months, and I can't say that it's in the most complex sense, but I've been using it in small doses, and the more I use it, the more I have become reliant on it in some respects. Now, there are risks associated with it, but to give you an example of how I've been using it from my perspective as a lawyer, but also for my own business, I've used it for legal research. ChatGPT is great if you feed it the information. If you feed it accurate information, it will help summarize vast amounts of information that I would ordinarily have to read. So it's really improved efficiency in that respect. I've used it for contract analysis, where it's been able to identify key terms, potential risks, inconsistencies between documents. And then more from a business perspective, and as collectively as a partnership, we've been using AI in our boardroom for the last, I think, 4 or 5 board meetings now, where we've been trialing AI to take the minutes, and we've had varying degrees of success. We've been trialing a number of different software solutions, and some have been, quite honestly, absolutely terrible. It may as well have been in a different language compared to one that we are now going to adopt on a regular basis, which has produced some excellent minutes and content. So it's really, it is changing the way that we're operating. To give you a few more examples as to how I'm using it, I'm using it to speed up content creation for blogs on LinkedIn for marketing purposes. I don't know how any of you feel, but when it comes to posting on LinkedIn, there is a slight hesitation from my side. It doesn't come naturally to me. So having a quick way of speeding up production of blog posts has helped immensely. And we've also used it just in creating job descriptions and looking at recruitment. So all in all, in the last couple of months, it's been really incredibly useful. And like I say, in summary, it's improving efficiency. It's enabling us to streamline and focus on higher value work. Of course, all of this needs to be balanced against the limitations of AI tools. We know that it can generate fake news. It can generate fake cases. So there is a balance there. You can only, we've already mentioned, it's only as good as the data that it's fed, but it's really starting to change the way that I'm working. So it would be lovely, and I'm not sure how this is going to work in the time that we've got left, if we could hear a little bit from those participating in this call as to how you may be using it and whether or not you're seeing it as an opportunity, whether or not it's enhancing delivery of your products and services. But I've given my perspective, and we do have a poll here prepared that I'm hoping Michael's going to put into the chat, and really gaining perspective as to what does AI mean for your business. So if you could go into the chat and place your votes, whether or not you see it as an opportunity, a risk, or both. So we'll just give it a couple of moments there. Thank you, Michael.
And Carrie, just while that's going live,
yes,
there's a question in the chat regarding which AI tool works best for taking minutes.
Ah, okay. Gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head. We've tried quite a few. So what I'll do, we're going to send a follow-up email after this webinar. So I'll include some of the information there in terms of the ones that have been working best. Let me see if I can find it whilst we're just waiting for the poll to come through. We've tried Assembly. I think that was quite good. Don't know without searching. Sorry, I will answer the question, but it will have to come after the webinar.
Whilst the votes are coming, it looks like there's a lot of overwhelming positive, well, a bit of risk in both, but I think the opportunity aspect's interesting. So I think both 58%, opportunity 42. Oh, well, now we've got a few more coming in. So what do the panel think about that? Now opportunity is losing its ground a bit. So I think, but don't let me prejudice you guys. I think this is an interesting poll.
Is that live on the screen at the moment? So 52% see it as an opportunity. We've got so most are seeing it as a positive, and I think that's absolutely right. There are so many benefits, both from an efficiency perspective, but also for being able to streamline processes, and overall enhancing service delivery and product delivery for customers and clients. So it is going to be an opportunity. I just caveat, and I guess I would say this as a lawyer, that we just need to be very mindful of some of those risks and balancing what it can currently do at the moment against those risks, and really staying ahead of the game in terms of educating ourselves as to how best to use it, given we've only really been using it for 6 months. So it is evolving and evolving very quickly.
Yeah, sorry, James.
So I was just going to say I'm pleasantly surprised the results of the poll. Actually, I would the people see risk. People who say seeing risk as the main thing is relatively low. That's encouraging. I think. I think with all, as I said earlier on, with all these things, it's sort of a matter of you'll get good and bad, and it's a matter of trying to manage our way through it in a very detailed and complex way. I think the idea that it's sort of an overall banner can be placed upon it is very limiting. I think every decision we need to make about what we do with this leads us towards the positive. And looking at this, it means that I think we all think we can manage our way through it, which is great and very encouraging.
We have a member with their hand raised, Dean Potter.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, that's no worries. I don't mind. I just put my hand up in case there was something I didn't have to put in the poll or anything. Yeah, my introduction to AI was I treated it like a preset, because we just was doing a new campaign video, and I get involved with all the music production on that side of things, me being a musician as a hobby as well. And when, for example, when you're mixing in the vocal sound and the voiceover, you would normally tweak the EQ so that the voice sits in. And AI came along with this EQ, this smart EQ AI, and it's just like a preset. You put the vocals and it sat in perfectly. So, but it wasn't, well, 90%, you still had to tweak it because you got the nuances of the individual voice. but I saw it as a time saver. So my introduction to AI is a preset in a program. And I think if you take that approach and then broaden that across the scope, it will always just be a preset program, and you can use it to assist you in everyday things. We now use it for our Salesforce as smart tips. Using Salesforce as well, we've upgraded to a module, an AI module that we've worked with them on, and it gives our Salesforce smart tip options on when they've seen customers, the ones they're about to see, and they're predicting where they are in the adoption pathway of an innovative biotech drug that saves lives. So it's helping us on that, but we do it as a choice. And we found so far, those that are using that choice are actually getting better outcomes. So it's making it really interesting. Do we make it a directive that they've got to use it or not? And then the other side of things, it's helping us design clinical trials as well. So we've got a drug with outcome data. We feed that into it, and it's giving us ideas of where it sees the diagnostics and development could benefit more patients' lives. So it's a very clever preset, and I think for me, I take the approach that it's just a preset program. I wind back to when I was in my own studio, mess around with some music production that gave me a really good result. And I think if we have that mindset and roll that back to people that don't understand it, we've got a really good start point of what it is. And I'm open to suggestions on that, but I might be biased and ignorant.
Thank you for that. I think whilst you were talking, one thing that sprung to my mind, and you'll have to forgive my my kind of ignorance, is you talk about AI from a different perspective compared to where I talk about AI from a lawyer's perspective, and it just made me think about whether or not this group, and I guess I'm putting out to members on the call and non-members if you are on the call, as to whether or not that it would be useful to have some kind of knowledge sharing session on particular uses, because I know, and there's a couple of people in the chat who have said, well, what how do I learn more about this, and what tools can we be using? And I think that would be beneficial for all of us to understand, well, actually, collectively, I've gone through the process of finding out which ones are best for minute taking, for example, in the boardroom. Save everybody else the energy. Let's as a collective come together and share that knowledge. So that's thinking off the top of my feet. Haven't put that before the IoD, but let's hope we can move that forward.
Okay, Juan has his hand up now.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I just have a very quick question now in terms of the legal framework that you were talking about at the beginning. So imagine that I'm a company and I'm developing a certain algorithm, and I have my solution. At what point is it do I have to comply? Like, is it audited? Like, if I just launch it and deploy it, like how would they know what I did? How would that legal framework work?
Yeah, you're ahead of the game there in terms of that the regulation is not yet there. So at the moment, it would be balancing the risks for your internal organization alongside ethical considerations. You would have to perform your own risk assessment at the moment, and to put in place controls that you think would be best, considering that at the moment we've got a lack of regulation from the UK government. That said, if you're in a particular sector and there is a regulator, the regulators are slowly catching up. But again, it would be leaning on them to say, well, actually, what controls, what can I put in place at this early stage whilst we're in this limbo state, to make sure that we've got the appropriate controls and frameworks in place. But unfortunately, there isn't an answer at the moment until we've got more clarity on what the elements of the legal framework are going to look like.
Thank you.
Now, Paul Brennan.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Paul Brennan
Yes.
here from Imandra. Similar question, but more in the European context, maybe one for Michael, perhaps. We actually specialize in a particular type of AI called symbolic reasoning, and we use formal verification techniques to help European financial market infrastructure improve their operational resilience. I've got one eye on the forthcoming EU AI Act, and I need to understand what sort of due diligence I need to do in the context of the regulations for the sort of obligations that may present themselves because we use these AI techniques, is there anything that I can use to do a quick assessment against, what the obligations are in the AI Act, and use that to give me an initial sort of signpost as where to look? Maybe tools, products out there.
Great question, Paul, and thank you for asking. We refer to this as the sort of readiness journey. In the same way that it was similar under GDPR, what we're encouraging people to do are doing things like pre-audits, where you assess the current state of your organization system controls versus the current requirements, doing a pre-audit, assessing where the gaps are and addressing them. With respect to tools, there are a lot of tools out there. I think one of the key tools and metrics, the one developed by the OECD, they have a list of tools and metrics for trustworthy AI. There is one called the European AI Scanner, which effectively identifies and risk classifies any AI systems under the EU AI Act. And that effectively tells you where your AI regulatory touch points are, and ultimately what the category is. So then firms know what to do. And so then when they're looking at things like conformance assessment, and you need formal verification techniques, which as I understand firms are building solutions or looking to build solutions for, they can use those to handle those requirements. I think we're at a delicate stage of policy making with respect to the EU AI Act, but with the trilogue discussions on the near horizon, we are very close to it being formalized by the end of the year with a 2-year transition period. And we are certainly, any firm with a nexus to Europe is being strongly encouraged to do this inward-looking exercise and procuring tools and expertise to get ready, because like GDPR, this wave will come very quickly.
Thank you. I certainly find that helpful.
Thank you, Michael. So we've got 1 minute left. So, Michael, if you could just move to the key takeaways. We just included a slide here to really summarize some of the topics that we've covered. I won't go through them in detail, given we've only got 1 minute left. I think to summarize, we know that AI is going to impact all of us. What's going to be critical is educating ourselves and fostering awareness of both its capabilities, limitations, and the potential impact. It will be vital to ensuring that AI is developed and deployed responsibly, so it benefits society as a whole. I think going forward, thank you ever so much for all of the comments and questions that have been raised today. We will be sending out a follow-up email, which we will include some of our insights from our own use case perspective, but also I think going forward it would be quite nice to have a knowledge sharing session if that's something that we can work out with the IoD for the benefit of members. But bringing it to a close today, I just want to say a huge thank you to Michael and my fellow ambassadors for helping organise this event. Thank you to the IoD, and thank you to all of you who have taken the time out of your busy day to participate. The IoD is keen to hear members' views on AI, so please feel free to reach out to either myself, to James Savage, or to Amanda Capon. And like I said, we'll provide contact details in a follow-up email, but you will be able to go onto the IoD website and seek those details yourselves if you so wish. So without further ado, I'm going to bring it to a close. 1 minute over time, according to my Mac. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and hopefully we will speak again soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks,
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.